All right. So, welcome to the Rock and Roll Ghost podcast. This week we have acclaimed actor Joe Mantegna of stage, screen, and many other things. A famous Chicagoan as well. Me being from Chicago, it's a real honor to get to speak to him. How are you doing today, Mr. Mantegna?
I'm pretty good, thanks. You know, in light of everything else going on in the world, I can't complain.
Yeah, good. Are you in your office?
I am. I'm in my home office. I have another office where my assistant works, but yeah.
Okay. All right. You got a lot of little mementos I'm noticing in the background there.
Oh, yeah. And I got little tchotchkes from different stages of my life. I think I can see right behind my shoulder, I can see Criminal Minds and Fat Tony, two of my longest running kind of endeavors. So,
yeah, definitely. Well, first, I just want to kind of ask, I know you're still active in a lot of different social things with regards to autism and things like that. I haven't seen you work in a while. Are you just taking a break? Are you looking for the right project? Do you consider yourself retired?
No, I'm not. No, first of all, no, I don't consider myself retired unless the business decides they want to retire me, I suppose. But no, actually, I have a new series, and it's in conjunction with kind of everything you just mentioned, because I've completed a series for Amazon called Forget Normal.
Okay.
It's supposed to air this last quarter, so sometime soon. I would think October, November, December, somewhere in there. They'll release the 8 episodes we shot. And it was created by Jason Katims, who did Parenthood and Friday Night Lights.
Oh, yeah.
And he has a son on the autism spectrum, where I have a daughter on the autism spectrum. And the wonderful thing about this show is it's about these 3 young adults who are all on the autism spectrum, who all live together in a kind of a protected home environment. And the 3 actors actually are on the spectrum.
Right.
And where they put their money where their mouth is, they hired 12 people on the crew who are also on the spectrum. And this is not just some independent thing. We shot this at Universal Studios. It's Amazon Productions. So and the scripts were just incredible, just wonderful, because it really is a portrayal of what that life is like, that world is like, not just for the young adults, but for their families, for their friends, for the world in general. So for me, I can relate to it, especially my white daughter's 35 years old now. So I mean, I can relate to it in many ways, as I'm sure Jonathan Jason rather can. And so I'm looking forward to that coming out. It was one of the best projects I've read in many, many years. And like I said, I applaud them for really doing it right. I mean, they had a representative on the set from a group called the Magic Project, who would kind of just make sure, the Miracle Project rather, to just be as a liaison for the people on the crew and for the cast who are somewhat on the spectrum. But these were pretty high functioning people, but they had their issues, and it made for a really compelling series. So we'll see.
Oh, interesting. Well, I have some experience, not necessarily with autism. I had a brother who had Down syndrome, died a number of years ago. And my sister works in special care for people with disabilities, including autism, at home, home facilities. And so there is a lot of that knowledge in my background. So it's kind of great that you're able to do a project that hits so close to home.
Yeah, and actually, they were going to shoot it in Chicago, the whole series. Mm-hmm. But at the time, just because of my lifestyle and because of my family and stuff, I've done so much travel in my life, and it was easy enough to do when my kids were young. But now, especially with my oldest daughter being somewhat dependent on us, I try to keep that more to a minimum. So I mentioned to them when I read the project, I said, this is a fantastic project, but I love Chicago. It's my hometown, but I can't relocate. But ultimately what happened is Jason and I guess both had enough kind of influence that they moved the project to Los Angeles, and we were able to shoot the whole thing here. But like I said, I think it's a really worthwhile kind endeavor, and we'll see how it goes.
Okay. But what's your role on the show?
I'm the father of the lead young man. Like I said, there's like 3 young adults. They all live together, and these places exist. There's my daughter's involved with what they call the regional center, where they provide certain kind of services. And so these 3 young adults live together. There's 2 men and a woman, and then Kevin Bacon's daughter Swosi plays their in-house, kind of like their den mother, the house mother, the one who kind of looks out for them. And like I say, I'm the father of the lead. One of the 3 is pretty much like the lead character, and I play his father. And I'm a single dad, and so it's all kinds of different issues. And since it's Amazon and not network TV, they don't have to pull any punches. So the show at times is shocking, funny, touching, tragic, all these things.
Yeah.
And very realistically portrayed.
Excellent. And you're expecting that to be released sometime before the end of the year?
They tell us they thought that they were going to release it in what they say is the last quarter. So in other words, I would imagine soon. I would think sometime in September you'll start seeing ads for it, some publicity, and then I would imagine the way they do now, as you know, with streaming these kinds of things, they tend to release them all at once. I mean, they'll probably put out all 8 episodes, and then people will decide how they want to watch it. Yeah. And then we'll see how it's received, and we'll see if we get picked up for it. There's certainly room to do many more episodes, and we'll see.
Okay. All right. Is that the only thing that you've been working on?
Well, actually, yesterday I just shot an episode of Barry. I don't know if you're familiar with the show. Barry,
I love Barry.
With Bill Hader and Henry Winkler.
Henry Winkler, yeah.
Right. So I shot an episode just yesterday, and the only teaser I'll give is that I play myself in it, which was kind of fun. Okay.
All right. Well, that's cool. At least you play like some kind of menacing character in it.
No. I get to play myself. So as menacing or not, that is. So, but that brings me up to currently. I still do a show. Yeah, I do a show on the Outdoor Channel. People who are into that kind of stuff. I've been doing it for 11 years now, called Gun Stories, which is not as ominous as it sounds. It's a show about the history of firearms and the history of the world, really. So it's kind of like that kind of a show that people who have an interest in that, because actually firearms throughout history, in a way, tell the history of almost every country on this planet. And so it's kind of an interesting show. We track, stuff going back to, the history of black powder, gunpowder, up to ultra modern day kinds of things and things from all over the world. So I'll be starting season 11 of that as well.
Well, I didn't even notice that on your resume when I was kind of reviewing it. So I'll have to. Yeah,
it's out there. It's cool. Yeah, it's out there. Like I said, it's been on the Outdoor Channel for the last 10 years.
Wow. All right, excellent. Well, I wanted to, the reason why I decided to kind of, I reach out, and I'm glad this worked even before your stuff comes out, was I just, out of the blue, I watched 2 things that you were in. And one you weren't really in, but you were in the special features. I bought the special edition of Glengarry, Glen Ross, where you do an interview about performing as Ricky Roma on stage, originating the character.
Right.
And I thought that was interesting because I knew that you weren't a bunch of Mamet plays before you started working with him when he started making films. I didn't realize you had been in that specific role in that project. Were you ever considered for the film role, or was Al always attached to it?
Well, what happened is it took quite a while for them to finally get around to making the movie of it. And you have to understand, doing the play Glengarry changed my life. I mean, it really started my career, really. I'd been banging around for 15 years as an actor prior to doing that role on Broadway. But, little things in Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, just kind of doing guest spots and whatever, theater. I was with the Organic Theater in Chicago for 5 years.
Bleacher Bums was like, when I was growing up, was like a huge, long-standing production. So, yeah. Right,
and they're still, to this day, they still do it. I feel very happy about that because it's a show I conceived back in 1977, and we were able to kind of do it. So anyway, my career was okay. I mean, I'd done a lot of theater, hardly any film or television.
Right.
But then I got the opportunity. I'd worked with Mamet a few times in Chicago doing plays and readings and all kinds of things. But then the opportunity to do Glengarry came up, and so I did the play. And of course, that year, 1984, changed my life. I mean, the show won the Pulitzer Prize. I won the Tony Award. I wound up doing the play on the entire run on Broadway, then toured for 6 months with Peter Falk, playing Shelley Levine around the country.
Yeah.
So that changed my life. I mean, all of a sudden I'm getting movie offers, this, that, and the other. But I was still, like I said, I was still kind of the new guy. I was just kind of getting started. So by the time they got ready to do and you have to understand this, or maybe I don't know if it was common knowledge, Al Pacino was offered the theater role first.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, not people may not know that. So, and the producers wanted to do that, of course. They wanted to stack the cast with some insurance. This is a brand new play, you want to.
Right.
So he was offered the role, but due to the grace of God, and at least for me, Al was busy at the time, had other things to do, and decided to take a pass on doing the role. So I think Mamet, God bless him. I mean, what the decision he made was they were starting to go through a list of then the other name kind of actors. And he said, you know what? I'd really like to just do this play with people that I kind of know and worked with and trust, and let's not try to do a play where the names are above the title type of where you're coming to see. You know what I mean? That he had enough juice, I guess, at that time to kind of at least have that influence.
Yeah.
So we did that play we were really just a cast of nobodies. And that was kind of almost the last time we had a Broadway straight show like that. Because the next show that opened that was a big kind of splash was, I'm trying to think of even the name of it, but it was like an all-star cast. Hurly Burly opened.
Okay.
And everybody in Hurly Burly was a big name actor, you could look it up and see where they all were.
Yeah,
but from that point on, it was very difficult to open a straight play unless you're coming in from England or something, some foreign play, have an American straight play without some sort of name value to it.
Right.
So that did it for me. But in terms of Glengarry, I'll never forget this. I was now on the tour with it. Like I said, I'd already done the full New York run of it per year. But I was still, to the general public, I was still nobody. I hadn't done any movies yet, any television really to speak of, just little bit stuff I had done prior. So I was on the road doing Glengarry when Mamet came to my dressing room, wherever we were. I forget what city we were in. And he walked in, and if nothing else, he's fairly blunt. He gets to the point, just as he is in his writing. And he said, I just came from a meeting. We just sold the script to Glengarry Glen Ross, the movie rights. You're not in it. And I was like, oh, okay, Dave. Well, thanks. What do you say? I wasn't expecting any of this news anyway. But
that was still early on.
I'm sorry?
That was still early on.
Yeah, it was still early on. We're talking, this was probably 86, something like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, then he said, he used to carry this mail bag with him to kind of carry his stuff in, almost like a mailman's letter bag. He reached into the bag and he took out 2 scripts and he laid them on my dressing room table in front of me. And there was the script to House of Games and the script to Things Change, 2 films.
He had written both of them by that point.
Yeah. And he put them on my desk or my dressing room table and he said, I won't make these 2 movies without you. And it was the lead role in both of them. Well, I shared, of course, the lead with Don Amici and Things Change, but I was certainly the male lead in House of Games.
Yeah.
And I thought, as it turned out, especially after having done both those films, that was a pretty noble kind of gesture and a perfect trade-off. Hey, don't get me wrong. I would have loved to have had the opportunity to do the movie of Glengarry.
Right.
I'm sure Carol Channing would have loved to have done Hello, Dolly, too. And there's a long list of Broadway stars who never wound up doing the film version of plays they originated,
Right.
So,
and I guess because it's my thinking, because I'm thinking of where you were at the time versus when the film came out, and that if Al wasn't attached to it, maybe you could have. But
maybe, but like as you saw, there was a lot of names in that thing. I mean, Jack Lemmon, was in there. They didn't go through any of the guys and I did. I played with Vincent Gardenia played the role with me on Broadway. Yeah. Bob Prosky was a tremendous actor.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He originated with me on Broadway. Peter Falk, as I said, did the run. So any of those guys could have been offered the role of Shelley Levine too, but weren't.
Right.
As were none of the other actors that did the play.
Right.
So it's okay. I mean, like I said, these things happen.
That is typical for Broadway 2 film too. It just, I just didn't think about it. I knew you were in it on Broadway. I just didn't, at that point. But it's like to see you actually on the feature kind of opened my mind to thinking about it, and especially because you had just been in the Godfather 3 with Al, and everything.
Right.
How people's minds just kind of start making like weird connections.
Yeah, no, exactly. And Al was actually very kind about that, because I remember when the movie came out and he was so impressed from it, he would on occasion mention me and say how he was thrilled to have been able to do the role, and he felt he was. He made some homage to having seen the show on Broadway and to my performance, and it was something he didn't really have to do. But I respect him for that, and he's a tremendous actor.
Well, everybody in that movie is so damn good.
Oh yeah, they're a wonderful cast, without question.
Every time I watch it, I don't know how Jack Lemmon didn't get an Oscar nomination for it.
Well, that's what I mean. Lemmon is like he was one of our gifts in this country in terms of show business. So
just a genius performance.
Right.
It's a heartbreaking performance, but
right.
And that took me to scrolling through Amazon, oddly enough, and just kind of looking to see what they had. And there's always films that you see in the theater, or you see maybe you saw on video or cable or whatever years ago. In this case, I had seen it in the theater because at that point I had seen House of Games, I had seen Things Change. Homicide was on Amazon, and I was like, I have not seen this literally since I probably saw it opening weekend at, who knows, I think I might have seen it at the Water Tower or whatever, like downtown, because it wasn't a big release. It was an art, but technically an art film, so you had to go, back then you had to go to the city.
He's on Zoom right now.
My daughter was coming in.
Okay. No, so you had to go to the city to see a lot of art, these artier kind of films. And so I watched that, and number one, and this will lead into Things Change as well. I forgot how early on I had seen William H. Macy in something. And then I was even more surprised last night when I watched Things Change for the first time in forever, that he was there with blonde hair.
Right.
I don't remember seeing William H. Macy being William H. Macy until I think Boogie Nights.
Right.
Around that time.
Well, he was also in House of Games too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I just bought the Criterion collection of House of Games. It came last night, so I'm eager to. I'm like going back and I'm seeing like a bunch of Mamet films I never saw. Like I watched The Spanish Prisoner for the first time last week, and boy, that is some movie too. You're not in it, of course, but it's still an amazing film. Was just. He still is, obviously, but he's slowed down a bit with releasing things. At least he just was just a masterful director as well as writer. What can you remember most about? Obviously, he wanted you to do House of Games and Things Change, and then you worked with him on Homicide as well. So you did like a trilogy of films with him, and you did another one later on, I know. What was that like? That those three films that really kind of solidified you I think in a lot of people's minds as a very serious actor. What do you remember about that time?
Well, I mean, like I said, I've had a long history with David. I mean, we've known each other since I think we first met around 1972 in Chicago, 73.
Wow, I was only 1 year old.
Yeah, so I mean, I was working with the Organic Theater at the time, and he had just come back from Cabot, Vermont, where he had taught at the School of Vermont, and being a native Chicagoan, he came back to his hometown. He was basically trying to peddle some plays. He was a playwright, and he was trying to peddle his plays. And I was working at this Organic Theater. It was one of those chance meetings where we met, where he had seen me do a play at the Organic and came up to me and said, "Hey, I saw the production. I'm a playwright. My name's David Mamet. Maybe someday we can work together." I was like, "Yeah, cool." And then, it was, to me, it was just, I didn't know who he was. And as one thing led to another, then the Organic Theater wound up doing one of his plays. Ironically, one I didn't do was The Sexual Perversity in Chicago.
Oh, right.
I was asked to do the original production of that, but I'd already been committed to do something else because it was during our summer break of the Organic. And so I had chosen to do another play, and not knowing that they were going to be doing this play of Mamet. So I wound up not doing that one, but I did wind up doing the next thing he did. I think was A Life in the Theater. I did the original production of that in Chicago. It wound up going to New York, but not with the Chicago cast, which was typical in those days.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I'd had a relationship with him, and David, as other directors do, he created almost like a stable of actors that he liked to work with and knew, especially from Chicago. So there were guys like myself, Bill Macy, Mike Nussbaum, a few of the other people that were part of his student group, which like Macy had been part of, Felicity Huffman, people that he had taught when he taught up in Vermont. So doing those films was just an extension of all of that. In other words, it was almost like summer camp. It was like getting back together with, oh, hey, how you doing? How you doing? What have you been up to? Blah, 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 blah. Even the crew, we were all very much in tune with each other and comfortable with each other, because if we hadn't worked already on stage together, we'd certainly worked together about each film that we did. So it was a very comfortable environment. So that's what I remember of it. That it was. It really was like just a very comfortable time of working with people you knew and trusted and felt comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, and there's so many people. Obviously, I'm going to watch House of Games again for the first time in a number of years soon, now that I own it. But just watching Homicide and Things Change, there are so many gangsters in Things Change that turn out to be cops in Homicide.
Exactly.
And I just marveled at Things Change last night and thinking, there's so few, in my opinion, perfect films, but I don't think there's a false note in that film. I think it's far less of a comedy than I remember it. It's still funny,
right?
But it's far less of a comedy. It's a lot more, without being extremely so, it's a little more tragic, because these are tragic people that are facing insurmountable obstacles, who, not spoiling it, it's a 30-something-year-old movie, but who end up basically being left to be at least alive in the end.
Right. Well, part of it, I think, came from the fact that this was one time that I could think of in all of Mamet's films where it was a true collaboration in terms of the writing. Because if you look at the screen credits, it's David Mamet and Shel Silverstein. Right. And so they were very close friends, and Shel was just this brilliant human being, writer, songwriter, artist. Almost every kid in the world has a copy of The Giving Tree or Where the Sidewalk Ends and all his children's books. And he also wrote the song A Boy Named Sue. He was so prolific. But his almost macabre and kind of yet also touching and sweet sense of humor and sense of comedy was a kind of a strong influence on Mamet's, his talents, his sense of darkness and maybe darkness is the wrong word, but that seriousness. In other words, the two of them blended together, I think, turned out to be a very good marriage. In other words, I think they complemented each other, yet brought their own voice to the script, which made it kind of a little unique. I don't think, in other words, the movie would have been totally different if Mamet had wrote it totally himself, or if Shel Silverstein had written it totally himself. Right. It had elements of both their talents involved, and I think it helped create what it became.
Yeah, it's a truly magical script, and the thing I love most going back, especially.
I'm just gonna take 1 second to let my dog in.
No, go ahead.
Scratching on the door. Wait a minute. 1 second. Come on in. All right. If I don't, he's going to start pounding on the door.
No, that's fine.
Go ahead.
No, what I loved about it was that compared to so many works now, is that it says things without having to really hammer it home. In a lot of ways, the best scene, not the best scene, but one of the best scenes for me is when you guys get to the hotel and Macy is looking at the guy. Was it J.T. Walsh? And he's got his hands on the keys, and he's like, like, no. And then, yeah, the top one, it's like, right. It's genius. There's so much the tenderness in that moment at the gas station when Don gets the money from the girls and the butler, and the look, the sadness in everybody's eyes, it's like, I almost want to tear up just thinking about it again, because I was like, I forgot how beautiful of a film it is, actually.
Yeah.
It's about people
I agree.
Kill people.
Yeah, exactly.
And also you get a great shot at the end with you guys walking off of Michigan Avenue onto the beach, right? That was right near Mag Mile.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, right by Oak Street Beach. And I'll tell you a little anecdote. It's such a great Chicago story involved with that film. The day we were shooting that sequence, we had shot that sequence on the beach, and they put up that phone, that payphone wasn't really there. They didn't put they put a fake one there, because normally there would be a payphone right on Oak Street Beach. But we shot that scene, and then we had our lunch break. And this is early November.
Oh God.
And so we took our lunch break, and then it started to snow. and we were supposed to complete more of that sequence. And now they realized this is impossible. It's snowing. It's not going to match to what we shot prior to lunch. And so the alternative is we have to lose a whole day of shooting now. We have to kind of either reshoot that stuff the next day or whatever. And so I remember the Chicago police coming up and everybody saying, well, what was their problem? The guy, Mamet, saying, well, God, yeah, it's snowing. We can't complete the scene. We're kind of stuck. We may have to just wrap for the day. He goes, well, there's no other alternative. He says, well, the only thing we could do is shoot what we were going to shoot tomorrow. That could be in the snow, but we were going to shoot that up and down Oak Street, but they already had signs up saying, I think the next day was like Friday. They said no parking on Friday because of filming. But now there were all these cars obviously there because this is Thursday. So the police and the Teamsters all talking to David, and they're saying, so you mean you could shoot here today now, but you can't because all these cars are here because you need them gone. They go, yeah. And without hesitating, he went, that's not a problem. They call up the tow trucks.
What?
And the tow trucks come in and start towing away all these cars.
Oh.
And then we're saying, well, how do you do that? And basically they said, we changed the signs. So now all the signs said no parking on Thursday. And I guess they figured they'll sort that problem out later. And I'm sure they gave you guys all a pass when they showed up.
Hopefully they did, but being the city of Chicago, you
never know. But so we were able to shoot the scene. I'm sure there were some surprised individuals who came out and went, "What? Hello."
I've had that happen to me before.
Yeah. So that was that reminded me of that day shooting on the beach. It was such a perfect Chicago story.
Oh, that's great. One thing I wanted to ask you about, because I don't know much about it. It's never been made into a film, but you were on the original Broadway production of Speed the Plow, which is kind of infamous. Because of the casting at the time. It was
right.
And Ron Silver and Madonna.
Correct.
Who you ended up co-starring with later on in Body of Evidence with her and
right.
Foe. What was that whole experience like? Were you? I just kind of give me a brief synopsis of what you remember from the time. There was a lot of controversy about her getting that role.
Yeah, I mean, it was Yeah, it was that would have been a movie in itself, just the whole making of Speed the Plow, that production. But it was at the end of the day, I mean, I felt pretty good about it all, in the sense that what had happened, she wasn't actually originally cast in the part. I'm trying to think what the original actress was, but due to personal problems, she had to pull out like about a month prior to us starting rehearsal. And what had happened is Madonna had seen the movie House of Games, what had just come out prior to that. Mm-hmm. And she wrote a letter, just a letter to David Mamet, not knowing him or anything, saying, I just want to let you know I saw this movie House of Games, which I think is one of the finest movies I've seen in my life. And if ever you would want to I would just do anything to work with you someday. Mm-hmm. And I remember him showing me the letter almost like jokingly, like, hey, check this out. Madonna loved our movie, like, oh, wow, cool, wow, that's great. And then I think what happened is, so she already had that letter prior.
Yeah.
So what happened was when this woman dropped out of the Speed the Plow, the producers knew about this letter too. And they were like, well, wait a minute. This might be a golden opportunity to kind of, do that thing. So I remember Dave calling me and saying, look, there's been some talk about us using Madonna maybe to do this role. And what do you think about that? And I remember saying to him, I said, Dave, my feeling is this. I don't know her. I really don't know her from Adam. I mean, she had just come up. She had been in that movie, Desperately Seeking Susan, which I thought she was good in and all. But I said, I would say this. Don't hire her because she's Madonna, but also don't not hire her because she's Madonna.
Yeah.
I said, if you think she can pull it off, if you think she's right for the role and satisfies, checks the boxes for you, go for it. Don't hold it against her. Yeah, and also don't make it the primary reason we're doing it. And I think that's the spirit. I think that we went in with it. And I got to say, I have nothing but respect for her. She was a very hard worker. She never played I'm this mega superstar, which she was around the world. I mean, I'll never forget those people would come to the stage door. There would be like people from every nation in the planet out there. And in the audience wearing T-shirts. I mean, obviously, she was a huge draw. There was no denying that. But I thought she backed it up. It was not an easy role. And the New York Times actually gave her a very good review. So, I mean, in that town, New York, that's. I think some other critics who kind of resented the fact she was in it were plucked that the Times gave her a decent review. And I think overtly almost attacked her because of it. Like, how dare the Times even acknowledge her existence? And I think that's wrong. I mean, like I said, there'd be nights she would call me because one thing she was unfamiliar with was working on theater, on stage, especially on a Broadway level. So some of the terminology escaped her, especially in rehearsals and stuff. And she'd call me and she'd say stuff like, what the hell was that about today in rehearsal? And I'd say, Madonna, it's okay. it's a lot of times they get carried away and they're talking in the theatrical lingo, and let me just lay it out simply for you. But it's fine. Just do what you're doing. You're fine. Right. And I think that solidified our relationship. Was why I was able to do the movie with her some years later with no qualms. And I mean, I just even recently did a reading for her. There's a movie that's being bandied about, I guess, that's going to deal with in a way her life. And she asked at the reading, she asked me to read the role of her father, which I would never play in the movie because they'll trace her life from birth. But I thought I was flattered that she still thinks of me in that vein, and I have nothing but respect for her. So all in all, it was what it was. It couldn't help but be somewhat affected by the fact that I was asked once in an interview, what was it like doing a play with Madonna on Broadway? I said, it's like working with Godzilla, but not in a bad way. I mean, it's like you're working with Godzilla because she's bigger than life, and so you have to accept that there's going to be like. But yet on the marquee, with me, Ron Silver, Madonna, we weren't playing up the fact this was who this was. So it's all good.
Yeah, no, and I obviously I never got to see the play, especially with her in it. But And you can only imagine the way the environment would be today with social media. But I just remember people being incensed at the idea that she was given this role.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of actresses were incensed because they felt they should, and I get it. I mean, there are a lot of great actresses that when they heard the role was available, they were, they could have had probably any of the A-list, certainly movie stars or theater actresses at the time to do it. And I think part of it was that. But, at the end of the day, choices are made, and for whatever, sometimes it's a myriad of reasons. And at the end of after we left the show, we all left at the same time because we had a 6-month contract, I think. And Madonna was done. She was ready to move on and go back to her music, and it was fine. Yeah. And we had the option to stay, Ron and I. But I think we all felt like, you know what, this was a special thing, the three of us. We should all just go, and they should just recast it, which they did. And it carried on with David Rashi, Bob Balaban, and Felicity Huffman. There was a wonderful cast, talented cast. So the play got its due in every respect of, like, it wasn't just going to be like, oh, that's the Madonna play.
Yeah. Well, I don't have much more time.
Okay.
But because your assistant or whoever gave me a certain amount of time, but I do want to ask a couple of quick questions. One is actually still on Speed to Plow. What was it like working with Ron Silver? He was somebody, he's somebody that's truly, he just gifted. And especially back then, he was, what was that whole experience like?
Well, it was great. Ron was a great guy. I mean, wonderful, talented actor. I mean, he won the Tony Award that year for that role. I mean, we became close. We kept our friendship up. We both were, because of doing that play, I think we were both asked to become members of the Kennedy Center Committee. Oh, wow. These are the people that we get to, it's not a vote thing, but you make suggestions for who should get the Kennedy Center honors every year. Mm-hmm. And we both did that right up until Ron passed away. We both did that for, at least 10 years. So we maintained that relationship. But he was very driven. He was very, he's a type A personality, Ron, a lot like the character that he played in the play of Charlie Fox. But yeah, he was just a wonderful talent. I got to know him and his wife and his 2 kids at the time. And I saw him do other things after that. He saw me do other things after that. Yeah. But he passed away way too early. I mean, I think he had esophageal cancer, something like that. But that, God, has to be over 20 years ago. Yeah, yeah. And so he died way too young.
Yeah, I remember him especially as Alan Dershowitz in Reversal of Fortune, which I remember being not only just an extraordinary movie, but an extraordinary performance. And it actually, for a long time, it shaped my idea of Dershowitz as a person. Unfortunately, my opinion of the man has changed dramatically over the last 5 or so years because he in my opinion, he followed a circus in the weird areas. But Ron was amazing in that role, especially, and he was good in so many other things. And I was just curious, like what your relationship was. So it's nice to kind of hear that,
Yeah, no, it was a good one. I mean, I even remember when I couldn't go to his son's bar mitzvah. And it was going to be a pretty big deal he was having, and I was out doing a film somewhere, whatever the reason. I remember it turned out his son was a Dodger fan, so I was able to send him a Tommy Lasorda. Tommy Lasorda was manager of the Dodgers at the time, and I became a good friend of his because he was my technical advisor on a film I did called Comrades of Summer, where I played a baseball manager. Okay. So Tommy and I got to be very close, and he gave me one of his jackets with his name on it and all that. I remember sending it to Ron's son as a gift for his bar mitzvah. Which he told me his son was that was like his favorite gift because it was Tommy Lasorda's jacket. That type of thing. So Ron and I, like I said, we continue, and even one of his cousins, this girl cousin of his, I stayed in touch with. And also he did this other thing, which was kind of interesting. They used to call it the Celebrity Seder for the Seder, because he was Jewish. every year he would have the Seder at his house. And it turned out to be somewhat of a celebrity Seder because he would invite the people he was working with at the time. And sometimes they were kind of people of note. So this particular Seder that year, when we were doing Speed to Plow, was my wife and I, Madonna, Carrie Fisher was married to Paul Simon at the time. They were there. There was another. Well, I can't even think who they were. There was this other the famous playwright and his wife were there. It was just, it's funny. I mean, it was just you looked around at everybody sitting at the table and you realized, God, this is like it's like the Algonquin Round Table or something.
Yeah.
It's like it's all these types. But that was kind of a nice thing, and it was because it was it was a family event, because of course there's also Ron's mother, his elderly mother, sitting there, and his family, and so it was great.
Ron's mother and Madonna.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's funny. Well, I have two more questions for you.
Okay.
They should be fairly brief, I think. One is, are you and David Mamet still close today?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, it's funny you mentioned that, because I was actually going to write him send him a check. He doesn't actually even really do email. He's still, I swear, he still writes on a typewriter. That's Dave. He's just, he's fighting tooth and nail against technology. But I was going to.
Well, at least he's not writing longhand.
Yeah, no, and I think he moved it. But I don't know if he's going past the typewriter to a computer. I doubt that, because I know he doesn't do email really. So I was going to contact him today about something that we've been talking about. So yeah, we're still in touch, because that friendship never changed. And what's funny is 99% of it was based on anything but what we do professionally. In other words, it's not just always him, the writer, director, and me, the actor. It was always just about everything else. Well, but that always came into play. That's the glue that brought us together. But we're still, I would still consider him a very dear and close friend, but yet not somebody that we don't see each other on a day-to-day basis. Not like we're all like, hey, what are you doing today? And what am I? We both know we have our lives to live with our families and that. But yeah, we're still very close, and I'm blessed the day I met him. I feel like that guy that probably was the guy that Shakespeare was a buddy of his back in the day, who said, "Hey, Jimmy, you want to play Hamlet? I got this new play." Sure, Phil. So I feel very lucky that I was that guy.
That's awesome. No, it's awesome that you're so close, because
Oh yeah.
Sometimes relationships don't last. Sometimes they last forever. It just depends.
No, I think this one I say. We're also 2 weeks apart in age. I'm 2 weeks older than he is, and we've shared that. I mean, and the fact that we're on every birthday, we definitely connect with each other, and because like I said, we're just 2 weeks apart, exactly the same age, and we're he grew up on the south side of Chicago, I grew up on the west side of Chicago. There's a lot of this. Yeah,
for sure. Well, the last question I have, it's about the Godfather 3.
Yeah,
and I'm one of those people that actually truly loves 3. I know there's a lot of people that are dismissive of it, but I think it's pretty genius of a film. It's especially the operatic sense of it. I mean, it's a little bit hammered, perhaps, but it is very operatic ending to the story. And you're the part of the story that's like the other films. You're right. The crazy Joe Gallo. What's his name? What's the other guy?
John Gotti.
The Gotti kind of mishmash,
right?
Flashy guy that has all sorts of different people, not just Italians in his gang. As Joey Zaza, and you have that great scene where you present that award to Michael Al Pacino,
right? The
Maiucci Award.
The Maiucci Award, right?
What's an Amucci? The first person to invent the telephone 1 year before Alexander Graham Bell. And
exactly.
I love that scene. I love the interplay with you and Andy in that. And you're not in it a whole lot, but you make a very great appearance in it. What are your thoughts on the film, especially now that Francis recut it? which I think actually, to my opinion, is to the detriment of the way he originally cut it.
Yeah.
You know,
I had a little misgivings about the very ending of the recut myself. But I thought it was a little better. I preferred the first one, but that's the first version. But that's that's personal opinion based on whatever.
But it's his right.
Exactly, absolutely. God bless him. I mean, Coppola. I mean, to be able to work with him and just to me was just so significant and just fantastic. The whole experience to me, I mean, there should have been a movie about the making of Godfather 3 too, because like I said, that was interesting in itself. I mean, because there was all the controversy of this and that. Winona Ryder was supposed to do that one role, and she dropped out in the last minute. And I know Francis, part of his decision was based on, he was going through a whole emotional thing. His son had died previously, the tragic accident. His whole family was visiting it during the holidays, and I think he felt comfortable having everybody there. There's a lot of things happening. And one other little tidbit that I'll mention it only because you brought up Things Change and how much you like that. That little bit that I do in the movie where I talk about, Meucci was a great Italian who invented the telephone. Don Amici, who played the guy they think invented the telephone. That was a total ad lib of mine that I put in rehearsal. And Coppola said to me after we did the rehearsal, he said, keep that line in.
Yeah.
And I was thrilled to do it. So, of course, I did. And, of course, I did it as an homage to Don.
Yeah.
And when the movie came out on Christmas Day later that year, I was living in New York at the time. I forget what I was doing in New York at the time. But I remember my answering machine. I was out that day on Christmas. It was Christmas Day. We were out doing something. I come back, and on the answering machine was a message from Don Amici. And it was, Dear Joe, it's Don. I just want you to know, my doctor and I think that was like his buddy, went to the opening of Godfather 3 today. I have a feeling that line you put in there was a little probably of your doing, and I just wanted to thank you for that. That tip of the hat, that heads up. I just want to plug this in. I just saw my computers about to kick out. It's a Plow picture.
That's great. That's great, especially.
But anyway, so that was
called you.
Yeah, that was a total ad lib, and Coppola left it in. And I'm glad he did.
That's a great ad lib, then.
Yeah. Because I just felt it was too coincidental too. Because here he had done that movie Alexander Graham Bell that everybody knew about. He even used to call the phone the Amici, back in the day. And so I just thought, I got to give it a shot. It's rehearsal anyway. And Francis was into that. He would let us do improv and stuff on rehearsals. And even in that scene I did, that big scene where I walk around the table and tell him I'm a bella figura and all that.
Yeah.
There was even some ad libs in that, because I remember I ad libbed the line of, I'd like to get a little pin from the Pope. That was a total ad lib of mine.
Oh, I love
that. And again, Francis, when I did that in rehearsal, actually what happened is he filmed the rehearsal unbeknownst to us.
Right.
And when I saw the movie, I was like, oh, fuck, he kept that line in there. He actually filmed that rehearsal. And the cameras were all kind of hidden behind the sets. We couldn't tell when they were rolling or not usually. Yeah,
because that's a big because there's
it's a huge set
going on. So it's like filming an explosion. You want to cover it from all different angles.
Yeah, and he did because it was all on one big set, because they built the whole thing on gimbals too. Because when I had the helicopters come in to blow everybody away, that they really were able to kind of get the whole set to kind of vibrate like that. Yeah, and that's why. So anyway, I have nothing but great memories of it. Again, to be able to work with Francis, unquestionably one of the greatest directors we've ever had in our history. And the Godfather films, whether you want to take them as, and it's funny you mentioned how much you liked 3. Many people of your age group gravitate toward that. And I think part of the reason is because Godfather 1 and 2 weren't part of your lexicon of things you grew up with yourself, like in your prime, that those, oh my God, Godfather 1 and 2 were like, it's like Gone with the Wind.
Well, it's a difference between seeing them on cassette before 3 and seeing them in the theater when they came out.
Yeah, that too, and but also you're able to see it from a different perspective. You weren't approaching Godfather 3 in a like a kneeling position because number 1 and 2 were the greatest movies you'd seen in your life.
Right, right.
And so you can kind of take it with, all right, let me just take this for what it is. It's part of this trilogy. And I think it holds up a little better for people like yourself.
Yeah, well, I thought I think one of the reasons why I thought it was just so beautiful was that I had known, especially the tragedy at the end with Michael's daughter and everything, and then knowing that what Francis had gone through in his life.
Right, exactly.
All this thing, and I still say that was Sophia the best actress possible for the role? Maybe not, but I thought she didn't deserve.
No, of course not. Absolutely
that she
not.
got. I thought she was actually kind of perfect.
Yeah, I mean, it's more realistic. I mean, it's kind of like, because it takes the movie star glamour, hot chick kind of image of that. It always, to me, all the Godfather movies never were gangster movies to me. They were family movies that happened to deal with the family that was in the business of being gangsters.
Right.
But the soul of those movies, what made them successful, was the family. And to me, that you don't get more family than Sophia Coppola, the daughter of Francis, playing and being the kind of a person that she was, because she never pretended to be like a Meryl Streep or a Winona Ryder. She was going to art school at the time, but she brought this certain kind of innocence, naivete, and kind of hey, she could have been my cousin type of thing to it. And I think that's something to be said about that.
I think it's a much better performance than people have said, but
I think you got to, and I think people, I agree with you there. I do.
Well, I don't want to take up much any more of your time, but I did want to say that I have actually kind of recently gotten into, by way of, I've been living with family since before COVID, and then COVID kind of solidified staying with family. Mm-hmm. And we're starting to rewatch all of Criminal Minds, so I kind of got into that. Honestly, I for a long time, network procedurals I haven't really been into, but I was surprised that I was actually able to get into Criminal Minds, and I just wanted to say that you were one of the reasons why I was actually able to continue watching that show, because it actually had a lot of interesting elements in it, and
that's what I always thought. I mean, thank you, but that's why I gravitated toward doing it and enjoyed doing it right up till the end, because I never felt we were a procedural. I always felt like the difference was the procedurals tend to be things for solving crimes based on evidence, this and that, and who's the bad guy, and fingerprints, and this. The whole basis of the show is based on the psyche of these people, and because of it, and since there was like the 8, sometimes the cast was down to 5, have as many as 8. It was that interplay between us as the people who have to do that job, and our behind the scenes stories that were also so important. I mean, that was just as important as the crimes we're going to solve. And I think that's what made it kind of like, to me, that's the success of soap operas. That's why soap operas go on 20, 30, 50 years, because people get invested in the characters and what they're about as human beings. And in this case, you're talking about human beings who have a really shitty job in a way, and yet have to get through it, and how it affects them personally, and yet still have to deal with that. So I think it's holding up in syndication. It still is like one of the top 5 syndicated shows on the planet Earth. I mean, most of my fan mail comes from Europe, and the show's done so well. In fact, there's now talk of bringing us back in some form, like perhaps on Paramount Plus. So I mean, and that's still in the air out there. So we'll see. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. But we're all, I think for the most part, we'd all be game to give it another, for at least a little while, give it another shot.
Yeah. No, that would be cool. Well, Joe, I cannot thank you enough for doing this. It's been a true honor getting to speak with you, just because you're one of the most important figures, I think, in Chicago history as far as the arts go. Hell, you've got 2 streets named after you in Chicago and Cicero, for God's sake.
Yeah, well, nobody ever confuses me being from anywhere but Chicago as soon as I open my mouth. But I mean,
that's for,
my heart's in the Windy City.
That accent's going away, man.
No, it's going away somewhat, I suppose. But I think when I get around a lot of Chicago types,
not you. No, not me. You.
Oh,
no,
you mean the one in Chicago?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, mine will never go away. Yeah. No, but that's good, and it's nice to talk to somebody like yourself. Believe me, that's part of the reason I accepted it, because I saw who you were and what you were doing, and I thought, yeah, a nice Chicago boy wanted to do something like this. Why wouldn't I do that?
That's awesome. Well, I do really appreciate it. I wish you the best, all the best in health and with work and with the new show coming out.
Thank you.
Just have a great rest of your day, okay?
Same to you, my friend. Take care.
All right. You too. Bye.
All righty. Bye-bye.